Two men walk into the same room. One is wearing a logo on every visible surface, shoes so new they still squeak, a watch he mentions within the first 2 minutes. The other is wearing a plain gray t-shirt, jeans that fit exactly right, and nothing that announces itself. Ask a room full of strangers who has more money, and most of them will point to the second man. Nobody taught them that rule. They just felt it. That feeling has a name, and once you understand it, you'll never get dressed the same way again. Researchers call it the quiet signal problem, and it shows up again and again in studies on status perception. The more visibly a person tries to broadcast wealth, logos, shine, obvious newness, the more onlookers unconsciously downgrade their actual status. It sounds backwards, but it isn't. Because loud signaling doesn't just announce money. It announces effort. And effort is the one thing real wealth is never supposed to need. Think about why that is. If you actually have money, you've had it long enough to stop needing anyone to notice. You already know what things cost. You've already worn the expensive version and gotten bored of it. Try-hard style, on the other hand, comes from proving something. It comes from a gap between where someone is and where they want to be seen. And other people, whether they can explain it or not, can sense that gap almost instantly. There's a term economists and sociologists use for this, conspicuous consumption, first described over a century ago by Thorstein Veblen. Veblen's core idea was simple. Once basic needs are met, people spend not to acquire things, but to signal status to others. But here's the twist modern researchers have added since. The signal only works until everyone else can afford it too. The moment a logo, a sneaker, a brand becomes accessible to anyone with a credit card, its status value collapses. So the truly wealthy quietly move on toward things that can't be bought quickly. Quality of fabric, precision of fit, restraint. This is why old money style looks almost boring at first glance. No logos, no shine, muted colors, fabrics you can't identify from across the room, but somehow look better the closer you get. It isn't an accident. It's a completely different signaling strategy. One that says, I don't need you to recognize this brand. I need this to simply fit, function, and last. Compare that to fit itself, which might be the single most underrated marker of status there is. A $500 jacket that fits poorly reads as cheap. A $30 shirt that fits perfectly reads as intentional. Tailors have known this for centuries. The eye doesn't measure price. It measures proportion. Shoulders that sit exactly where shoulders should sit. Sleeves that end exactly where wrists begin. Trousers that break at exactly the right point on the shoe. None of that requires wealth. It requires attention. Here's a question worth sitting with. How much of your own style is actually about looking put together, and how much of it is secretly about being noticed? There's a related concept researchers call self-monitoring, how closely someone tracks and adjusts their appearance based on how others might react to it. High self-monitors tend to overdress for status, layering on visible signals because they're anxious about how they'll be perceived. Low self-monitors, somewhat counterintuitively, often project more confidence because their clothing choices come from personal consistency rather than external anxiety. The irony is sharp. Trying too visibly to look wealthy is itself a tell that reads as insecurity, while genuine ease reads as the opposite. None of this means expensive clothing is inherently bad, or that spending money is the enemy. The mistake isn't spending. It's spending in a way that's still asking for permission, still hoping someone notices, still needing the price tag to do the talking instead of the fit, the fabric, the fact that everything simply works. Maybe that's the real difference hiding underneath all of this. Looking rich was never really about money at all. It was about restraint, about having enough self-assurance that you don't need your clothes to argue your case for you. Try-hard style is always making an argument. Quiet style has already won it. You walked in thinking the goal was to look expensive. The goal was never to look expensive. It was to look like you never had to think about it at all.